Hello and welcome to Rosie's Preserving School Pressure Canning, and it's all about spuds today, to potatoes. It doesn't seem much to learn, but it's going to be surprisingly complicated because I don't normally do two types of potato in one session, so I'm going to have to keep my wits about me and make sure we cover everything. There is a slight error in the recipe I've noticed, and when I get to it, I'll tell you to delete that bit. It's only about putting another pan of water on, which we don't need, so I just copied it wrongly. Potatoes, yeah, they are useful as a pressure canned item in the store cupboard. Generally what I do is when I order potatoes from the farm shop, I use what I can while they're really, really fresh. And then if it's getting towards the next week, when maybe another lot will be arriving, I will pressure can what's left so that they're stored away, but they're not going all dried out and wrinkly and growing shoots and all the rest of it. Nothing more depressing, I think, than having to sort of deal with all that. So they're easy to do in small quantities. I wouldn't want to get a 25 kilo bag and work my way through it. But if you just do a few now and again, perhaps when you're doing something else that matches time-wise, it's a good thing just to sort of keep a few on the shelf if needs be. I know they store pretty well in the winter, but sometimes time's an issue, and with peeling and mashing and all the rest of it, you just think, oh, I'll open a jar. So what I've got in my pan here are my potatoes I'm going to do today. You can do any amount that you want. I've tried to give you some guidance, but it depends on the size of jar you want to do and how many. So the crucial thing is to peel them and also then put them into soak, so some of the starch gets released into this soaking water and doesn't end up in the jar too much. Now, the reason you peel them, and this is where we come up against something that we have talked about, but it hasn't been a major issue because we've been doing things that are like dried beans that are already, stable, or meat or something like that. But with potatoes, we come up against botulism. Now, I say we come up against it, it's not special to potatoes, because they're grown in the earth and generally arrive in our kitchen with earth on them. It's prudent to be careful how you prepare them. Now, the thing is, botulism spores are everywhere on things that are growing, vegetation, everything like that, but it's mainly in soil. So that's where we interact with it most in our daily lives. And normally speaking, it doesn't do us any harm, but you should obviously, that's the reason our mothers told us to wash our hands when we came in from the garden before we touch anything else. And that's what I do all the time. People such as me who've had a lot of medical treatment and their immune system is compromised need to be really careful in the garden. I have to wear gloves, I have to wear long sleeve tops, long trousers, boots, so that I can't get scratched where the bacteria and so on in the soil can get into my bloodstream before I've had a chance to go and clean up. So it's something to be aware of and something to be careful of. I know some people scrub their new potatoes really well and they pressure can them whole as baby new potatoes, but you just need to make sure in that case that you heat them thoroughly before you use them. Don't just drain them and put them into a potato salad or something. They need to be brought up to at least 73 degrees, 80 degrees for about 10 minutes to make sure that everything's safe. What happens if you don't remove the skins or scrub off the soil really thoroughly? The botulinum spores can stay in the jar, in the food, and you aren't going to know they're there. And so you would need to, as I say, cook the potatoes thoroughly. But by pressure canning them, they are destroyed. If you read some of the forums where they say, oh, water bath things for 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever, and then reheat it thoroughly before you eat it, that is because they are not killed at standard boiling temperature. They're only killed by the extra temperature that is, and that you use in pressure canning. So when we've pressure canned our potatoes, they will be perfectly safe, and you can eat them straight from the jar if you wanted to. But if you're canning new potatoes with skins on, I would still cook them again before you eat them. The botulinum spores will stay in a water bath situation. They won't be killed. They'll stay in the jar. And then if you don't reheat them thoroughly, the food thoroughly, they will proliferate and change into the botulism bacteria, and which becomes very, very dangerous. So I'm not a fan of the long water bathing system. I'm not going to, say people shouldn't do it. It's their own decision, but I would never, for no other reason than I don't want to stand by a boiling pan for 3 hours, topping it up with boiling water to make sure it stays boiling and doesn't boil dry. I haven't got that amount of time, so I'd much rather pressure can it and have done with it. But I know it's a huge issue these days, and but people have been harmed by it, and I don't think it's worth taking the risk. So what we're going to do is some plain sort of boiled potatoes, nothing done to them. And then we're going to do some that are, you can use out of the jar in a different way. Now, these are what the plain boiled ones look like. I can't tip it too much because I've already taken the seal off. And you can see the water is cloudy. That's because more starch has come out of the potato. You have to choose your potato quite carefully. You don't want anything that's going to be all floury and disintegrate. You want sort of waxy potatoes that are going to hold their shape. But starch will come out, and that's perfectly natural. You can't always soak it out of the raw potatoes. And then we're going to do these potatoes, which look disgusting, but they are in a butter sauce. And they are great for using with cooked breakfasts, omelets, for topping things, and all of that kind of thing. So they're good to go as a quick topping for things, or a quick side. If you want to put them in the oven and put a tray over the top and maybe cook some chicken joints or something like that, they'll be fine for that. The plain ones you can use wherever you would use potatoes. And I particularly use them. We often in midweek have what we just call a big omelette. So whatever's in the fridge, bacon or ham, cheese, tomatoes, mushrooms, whatever there is, and I will open one of these and chop up the potatoes and fry them first, then put the other ingredients in, top it with eggs and grated cheese, and then finish it off under the grill, and we'll have that for supper, every now and again. And they're really useful for that, and for making potato salad. I often think, I'll make some, I've got to peel potatoes, cook them, cool them. You could open these and put your dressing on, and it's done. So I'll be looking at those again in a moment, but I'm just going to start. I've got my pan of boiling water, and I'm going to prep the ones that are going in the jar whole. Well, not chopped up and in butter. So the plain potatoes, I've already cut them up a bit. I cut them that sort of size because then they will fit into the jar quite efficiently. If you have them too big, there's too many gaps, too much wasted space. So I'm just going to cut up a few, and then I'm going to put them in this boiling water, and you sort of blanch them for 5 minutes. If you've got a huge pan of them, then do them for a little bit longer, but you don't want them all breaking up. I think a lot of the time I find with pressure canned food, the savings are in the prep. You've done a batch and it will last you 5, maybe 7 meals, and it just saves so much time and all the having to get rid of peelings and all the rest of it. You can do it all in one go. So there's my potatoes. I'm going to drop them in to cook in the hot water. Right, that's that. Just wipe my board. Now, the ones you're going to chop up, you can do them whatever shape you like. I quite like to sort of dice them in about 1 centimetre dice. I find that's most useful. You can do sort of long chip shapes and then cook them as chips when you take them out. Or you could do like rounds, cut across to lay on like a hot pot or something like that. So I'm going to chop these one way, then the other, and then the other. This is quite time consuming. But if you're always going to use your plain potatoes, which is in the pan at the moment, then for mash, you could chop them up like this and get them cut quite small, and they would cook that much faster when you're going to use them. Just let that come back up because the potatoes are cold. It's taking the temperature down a bit. I've got my canner on and the water's heating up. And these will all go in together. They're all cooked at the same temperature for the same time, or same pressure for the same time, rather. Just going to put these in this jug so I've got a bit more room, and I can just put them into the hot water again when I.
Rosie, how long are those potatoes going to be in there for?
They're going to be 10 minutes, but I'm just waiting for the 5 minutes. I'm just waiting for the water to come back up.
Okay.
To the boil as it's dropped off. I'm going to start them. If I can find my timer in on with these. You may see a little green pile on the corner here. I'm just going to put some chopped rosemary, fresh rosemary in with these. You can put any flavoring that you like, any herbs. You don't have to put herbs in. You could put chilies in, you could put anything that you like as a flavor. It doesn't make any difference to the processing, or you might just want to leave them plain. So it's up to you. But I quite like this kind of potato with some rosemary on. Right. I'm just going to burn and put another pan on to heat up. I can just fill up a pan to do that. I've just put the kettle on so that I can start the other pan for the these diced ones quite quickly, because I've got to drain these in a moment when the timer goes off, and so I lose all my hot water. So I say it's a bit of a juggling act today, but hopefully it'll all make sense. I've got my jars ready and lids and everything, so good to go. Yeah, so I've got some salt as well, which will go into the jars of the plain potatoes, just half a teaspoon per jar. Then when you come to use them, you can just empty the jar straight into a saucepan and heat them up if you want them hot. There's no need to sort of drain them and wash them and all the rest of it. You can just put the whole lot in and heat them through until they're how you want them. So oh, I'm all ahead of myself. Minute to go on these, and then I'll go out and drain them in the sink in the colander, and then bring them back into put into the jars. Sort of like call the midwife here with pans of boiling water and kettles and goodness knows what. It's I need to get my heat pad. Right, there we go. I'll just go and drain these. Those. I just need to put the other pan of water on for the other potatoes. Right. That's the pan for the diced ones, and that can heat up while I'm filling the jars for the plain boiled ones. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So when you come to do this, you need to sort of fiddle around a bit to get them in the jar economically so that they fit. And by cutting them in relatively small pieces, it's quite easy to do. And I have found that one 500 ml jar is plenty for us for one serving. If I'm using them for an omelette or something, then they'll do 2. I didn't put the salt in. Let's put the salt in. I'll find my spoon. There we are. Half a teaspoon of sea salt. I'll sprinkle it around. It will find its way through. I'll do all of these while I'm thinking about it. Right, it's good. I don't know how many jars these will fill, but we'll see. I've already got quite a lot done, so I'm not worried about running out in the winter or anything. I think sometimes when you're filling these jars, you think, well, that's not very much, you know. But when you come to use it, it's surprising how far it goes. There. Might get one more, be 5 jars, which is fine. There we are. So I'm just going to get some boiling water to top them up with, up to the fill line. Jugs never pour properly, do they? 2, 3, 4. A bit more for that one. Right. Up a bit. Now we're going to just move them around a bit, make sure there's no air pockets down in all those crevices. Over here, then I can do the tops with the vinegar. I've got here. I know there's nothing sort of oily or anything in these, but it's a good habit to get into, to do it all the time, and then when it's really important one day, it will save you having something that hasn't sealed, which hasn't happened yet. We've done really well. So that's those. Let's get the seals on. Now you'll notice if you've got pressure canning books, you always see this lovely picture of a jar of completely clear potatoes like that, and that's before they're processed. Once they're processed, they can just end up being quite almost grey, but don't be put off. They taste okay, and you know, just put them in things where they're a bit disguised. They'd be great as roast potatoes. You can put them in casseroles or pour casserole over it, put them in the bottom of a dish and on a, you know, on a plate, and pour the casserole over the top. You know, just use a bit of artistic license when it comes to it. Oh, they're hot. Right, I'm going to put them in the canner so that they stay hot while we do the others. It will only take about 5 minutes, so they won't overcook. That's coming up to the boil, so I can put the potatoes in a minute. Let's pop those in there. This one all crooked. That's better. That's 5. Move them around a bit. That's that. Okay. So now I'm going to put these potatoes in the hot water to blanch them, and that will be for 2 minutes. Because they're much smaller, you don't want them in longer than that, otherwise they'll just be cooked to nothing. I've got this pan that I've just used with the colander. As soon as they've it comes back up again, and then I'll time them for 2 minutes. And all will be well. Now, where's my other saucepan? Yeah, I'm going to put so that I'm ready. Once I take that off of the hob, I'm going to put 125 grams of butter in this smaller saucepan, and then I'm going to put that on the hob to melt once the potatoes come off. I told you it was going to be a juggling act. So this is 250, so I want exactly half of that, and then I'm going to cut it into thick coins, thick slices to go in to melt. That. Wipe up all this water I've spilt. It's ready. Now let me just check. You'll see I put the pan on to boil again and repeat with the diced sliced potatoes, but only cook for 2 minutes. And then I drain the potatoes, empty the pan of water, and put fresh water on to boil. You don't need to do that. I copied down the recipe and put an extra line in, so you don't need to do that. So let's time these, because I don't want them overcooking. Got that. 2 minutes. Start. And I've got my jars ready. Once I've cleared the decks a bit, I'll bring them over. Oh, I know what I was going to do. Okay, sort. Yeah. I'll do that when they're in the pan. So I've got some black pepper there. And I'll get my salt, which I put away. And I've got my rosemary, which is already chopped up on my board. So watching time again. Right, that's good. I'm going to drain these. They haven't been boiling madly, but you can see from the pan the amount of starch that has come out from them just in that short time. All these white sort of foamy bits are the starch, and that's what we want to kind of wash out of the potatoes. A lot of people do several soaks for longer than an hour. If they're doing a big batch, they'll soak the potatoes nearly all day with several changes of water, just so that they hold their shape better. But if you haven't got a lot of time, then just do what you can, and it very much depends on your variety of potato. So I'm going to pour the water through there to drain them, and then lift that out, so then sat in the hot water. Put it back on that pan and take this one away. And again, if I hold that under the camera, you can see how cloudy and sort of milky it is just in that short time. So that's good. That means crispy potatoes when you come to use them. Right, enough with the boiling pans of water. Just get the butter melted, put that on the hob, turn down the heat a bit. We don't need it up that high, otherwise it'll be getting too hot. And normally you would put these in a bowl, a heat-proof bowl, and you can then pour the butter over them and everything. But I haven't got a huge quantity, so I'm going to put them in the pan with the butter once it's melted, so that I'm not transferring it from pan to pan to pan. I might need my wide mouth funnel for this because because these are much smaller pieces, and we're going to be ladling them into the jars. The butter is melting nicely. I'm just going to put a little bit of black pepper into there, because the heat of the in the pan, everything will bring out the flavor. I'm not going to put a lot. That was just literally a pinch, because you can add more when you come to use them, but you don't want them sort of over seasoned. And I can put my little bit of salt in there as well. I'm not going to, again, not going mad with it. About half a teaspoon to a teaspoonful. And finally, my chopped up rosemary, which is growing outside the building here in my old butler's sinks, and is now going to be used to store for the winter. Give that a bit of a stir. It all starts to become very aromatic. Right, that's melted. I'm going to turn this off, put my butter down here, and see if I can get all these potatoes, or I might do it the other way around and pour the butter into here, and then I've got more room to maneuver them. More room would be a fine thing, wouldn't it? Let's get all of the butter out of there. Put in the potatoes, and then they can get nicely anointed with the herby butter. Turn it all over. Make sure they're all covered nicely. I'd eat this now, it smells lovely. All right, get rid of those two. and get my other jars. I don't know how many ones to make, but you don't fill up, you can fill up the jars with the mix as much as you can, but you're not going to be adding any more liquid, so you don't need to worry about that aspect. So each time you get a scoop, make sure you get some of the butter with it. I put these, well, the first time I did these sort of last year, I put them in 750 ml jars, and for us two, that's sort of too big really. So I'm going back to my faithful 500 now. Try and get 4 jars out of this. Doesn't matter if I've got a slightly smaller one, because I'll just put it in an omelette or something when I don't need as many. Too much butter in with that one. No, it's just a case of going around the bowl and making sure you use all the butter up. Some in each one. Except the last one, which hasn't got so many potatoes. Right. Now this one, it will be important to do the wipe the rim of the jar because of all the butter. Make sure you haven't splashed anything up there. Oh. Oops. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 9 jars of potatoes, which is fine. Go add to my others. Put those across the top with the jars already in there. Good. So now the lid is going to go on. That way. Turn that round. Turn up the heat. And wait to vent. So I'm going to go and clean this up a bit, and then I'll come back in about 5 minutes and show you what we're having for supper tonight using the potatoes. Oh, I haven't put the vinegar in. Nobody reminded me. Vinegar in. Right, I'll see you in a few minutes. Yeah. Okay, so while I was washing up the can of Ventis, so I've closed it now with the weight, and the lock is up, and I just need it to come up to pressure, and then I can start timing. And while that happens, I'm going to show you our supper tonight, not chicken tonight, but supper. I've got a bowl here. I've got 3 jars off the shelf. So I've got a jar of bolognese, which I'm going to empty into my bowl here, which I'm going to cook it in and spread it out. Now it's going to have both kinds of potatoes on the top. I wouldn't normally do that, but I wanted to show you both kinds out of the jar. So what I'm going to do is drain the plain potatoes so we can have a look at those. Drain off that starch and everything and the water, and I'll put them in my scale pan, and then I can use that as a bowl. And you can see what they look like. As I said, they can look a bit grey or a little bit sort of beigey colour, but they're all cooked. I'm going to try and mash them. I'm not going to add anything into the mash because there's going to be plenty of oil in the bolognese. I'm just going to roughly mash these if I can. A bit slippery. Let's just chop them first. Stop them sliding about. And you can do this more thoroughly than me, you know, use a stick blender or something. There'll be plenty of seasoning in the second jar of potatoes, so I don't need to add anything to this. They've been cooked with a little bit of salt in the jar. And you can see they're not falling apart. They're quite firm still, so the processing hasn't destroyed them. Let me just finish those off. Keep an eye on my pressure. I'm going to put these onto the top of the bolognese mix. It's just my standard mince mix with, you know, various bits and pieces in. Put them over the top. Now, if I wasn't using the other potatoes, I would season these and put some milk or cream or something in, and then top it with some cheese, probably grated cheese. That's that one. And now these are the ones we've just made, the diced potatoes, and this is in the bigger jar. And these ones I did leave the skin on. I did scrub them thoroughly. The skin on new potatoes. And all the butter gets collected at the bottom. The white is just the starch out of the potatoes that's sort of made a jelly. And I'm just going to sort of break them up a bit, and I won't be able to spread the butter around necessarily evenly because it's in pieces, but I'm going to spread that on the top of this one, and then all that butter will melt into the two sorts of potato, hopefully. So let's just fill in the gaps with this one. I'm not going to press it down, it's going to be a chunky topping, and you could just do this topping on its own on top of anything really, or heat them in the oven in a tray and serve them as a side, or as I said, use them as a breakfast addition of a weekend, you know, a sort of brunch. I think everybody loves the fried potato. Now I'm going to pile them up. As I said, I wouldn't normally have two sorts of potato, but just gonna, I wanted to open both, so we might as well use them up. Okay, so that's that. Spread the butter out quite evenly. So I'm up to pressure, so I'm going to start timing for 35 minutes. And I'm going to put this in the oven at the same time. And by the time we come back, you should be able to see how they look when they're cooked. Okay, I'll see you in a bit. Hello, back again. You're getting on okay? I've got our supper out of the oven, so you can see when we change the camera over, you can see it on the table here what it looks like. I might need to move it more in the center, perhaps. It's all lovely and hot. We'll probably have it when we go home. There we are. You can see there, all potatoes nice and brown on the top. And I put a jar of baked beans we could have with it, or we could have a jar of runner beans, although we've got fresh runner beans, to be honest, so I might do those instead, and maybe a few carrots with it. And there's supper done. Didn't take long to open 3 jars and mash a bit of potato. And the canner's nearly finished. I'll just get my towel ready to put well, it has finished, it's just depressurizing, so get my table protected. Oh, it's down on the last dregs of pressure releasing. It's right down on 0, so I'm surprised it's still got pressure or steam. Not a great idea to do that because it can siphon the jars, but it's pretty innocuous stuff in the jar, so I'll wait till it's finished venting, then I'll take the lid off. But here it's still bubbling away, so it's very hot still. locks the lock. Can't do that till the lock goes down as well. Oh, that works anyway. There we go. This is going to be really hot taking this off. I'm going to use a cloth. I wouldn't normally open it immediately, but always angle it away from your face if you have to do this. Otherwise, all this steam will come straight out and hit you. There we are. And there. And look, see what we've got. Don't say potatoes. So there's the potatoes in the butter, and obviously the butter's still all liquid, but they look very nice. Three jars of those, 4 jars of those. There's one on the bottom layer. See if I can get out some of the and that's the plain potatoes. Not too starchy, so that's good. I don't want to tip them too much because I don't want it to vent. So a few more jars on the storage shelves. One, can't remember how many we did now. 2, 3, 4 of those. Right, and there's the odd one there. And the last boiled one. Good. So the stores are gradually building up. We'll all be good to go for the winter. And I think next week is a loaded potato soup from memory. I meant to check in the break what it is. I don't know if we can have a look next time. I'm pretty sure because it's another. Let me have a look. Yep, loaded potato soup. So that will be more potatoes, but in a ready-to-go soup in a jar, which you can either use as soup or you can use as a big soup as your dinner, you know, by adding other things maybe. So if we're all good, I'll see you in 2 weeks' time and we'll do potatoes again, but different.